Good evening and welcome to my channel. Iran just attacked Dubai International Airport with suicide drone that crashed near Concourse A, forcing complete suspension of operations at world's busiest international hub, handling over 90 million passengers annually and stranding thousands of travelers, including British citizens desperately trying to evacuate as Middle East war enters 8th day with no end in sight, while simultaneously Iranian forces destroyed American military runway at Kuwaiti airbase, where U.S. forces operate, creating crisis where Trump administration must decide whether expanding war to directly strike Iranian territory in retaliation for attacks on civilian infrastructure constitutes acceptable escalation, or whether continued restraint allows Tehran to pick off American assets and regional partners one by one until Gulf allies lose confidence in Washington's ability to protect them. Dubai airport grounded. Global aviation hub paralyzed. UAE intercepted 15 ballistic missiles and 119 Iranian drones today alone, proving Tehran is launching hundreds of weapons daily, attempting to overwhelm Gulf defenses through sheer volume, creating a situation where even 90% interception rate still allows dozens of Iranian weapons to penetrate, killing civilians and destroying critical infrastructure. And Trump just posted that Iran will be hit very hard today, promising immediate massive retaliation for Dubai attack, while world braces for what military analysts are calling the big one, meaning potential American strikes on Iranian homeland using full spectrum of American military power, including possibly tactical nuclear weapons or at minimum bunker busters targeting deep underground facilities that conventional weapons cannot reach, creating escalation to weapons of mass destruction that transforms regional conflict into global crisis, requiring emergency United Nations Security Council meeting and potential direct intervention by Russia and China to prevent nuclear exchange. Let me walk you through exactly what happened at Dubai Airport this morning, because this attack represents major escalation from military targets to civilian economic infrastructure, with profound implications for how regional nations calculate costs of supporting American military operations against Iran. Attack occurred approximately 6:15 a.m. local time, March 7th, when Iranian suicide drone evaded UAE air defense systems and crashed near Dubai International Airport Concourse A, according to eyewitness reports and video footage circulating on social media showing explosion and fire near terminal building. Dubai International Airport is not random target. This is world's busiest international airport measured by passenger traffic, critical hub connecting Europe, Asia, Africa, and Middle East. Economic lifeline for Dubai and broader UAE economy that depends heavily on tourism and business travel, and symbol of Gulf Arab prosperity and modernity that Iran apparently decided to attack, sending message that Emirates are not safe havens immune from Iranian retaliation despite hosting American military forces. Airport handles approximately 300,000 passengers daily under normal operations, meaning any disruption affects hundreds of thousands of travelers, creating cascading delays throughout global aviation network. Immediate response was total suspension of all operations. Airport authorities ordered complete halt to arrivals and departures, creating situation where aircraft already in flight were diverted to alternative airports, including Abu Dhabi, Doha, Qatar, and Muscat, Oman, while planes on ground were prohibited from taking off, leaving thousands of passengers stranded in terminals, not knowing when they would be able to continue journeys. Video showed smoke rising from impact site near Concourse A, with emergency vehicles responding, and passengers being evacuated from terminal areas closest to explosion. Several hours later, airport announced partial resumption of operations, meaning limited flights were being allowed, while authorities assessed damage and implemented enhanced security measures. But partial operations means dramatically reduced capacity, creating massive backlog of delayed flights and stranded passengers that will take days to clear, even if no additional Iranian attacks occur. Airlines are reporting that thousands of passengers are stuck in Dubai, unable to leave, while thousands more scheduled to arrive have had flights canceled, creating humanitarian crisis where travelers are trapped in war zone with limited options for evacuation. British citizens feature prominently in reporting about stranded travelers because UK has substantial expatriate community in Dubai, working in finance, real estate, hospitality, and other sectors, plus significant tourist population at any given time. British government has been issuing travel advisories warning citizens to leave UAE immediately. But Dubai airport attack makes evacuation impossible for many who cannot get flights out. British Foreign Office is reportedly working with airlines to arrange emergency evacuation flights, but with airport operating at partial capacity and ongoing Iranian missile threats creating insurance and safety concerns, commercial carriers are reluctant to commit aircraft to Dubai routes. This creates political pressure on British Prime Minister to either arrange government-chartered evacuation flights using military transport or diplomatic aircraft, which would require coordination with UAE authorities and commitment of scarce resources, or leave British citizens stranded in an increasingly dangerous situation, creating domestic backlash where voters blame government for failing to protect nationals abroad. Similar situation exists for Americans, Europeans, and other foreign nationals trapped in Dubai, highlighting how regional war is creating global humanitarian consequences, affecting millions of people far from actual combat zones. Meanwhile, in Kuwait, Iranian forces destroyed American military runway at Kuwaiti Air Base, according to Pentagon sources confirming attack. This represents direct assault on American military infrastructure used for conducting operations against Iranian targets, meaning Iran is now targeting not just regional partners like UAE, but actual U.S. military facilities, creating a situation where Washington must respond forcefully or risk appearing unable to protect its own forces. Details about Kuwait attack remain partially classified, but reports indicate Iranian ballistic missiles struck runway, making it unusable for aircraft operations, requiring extensive repairs before American planes can resume using facility. Kuwait hosts significant American military presence, including Ali Al Salem Air Base, which serves as logistics hub and staging ground for U.S. operations across Middle East. Destroying runway at this facility degrades American operational capability, forcing reliance on alternative bases further from Iranian theater and creating delays in mission tempo that benefits Tehran by reducing frequency and intensity of American strikes. But more significantly, successful Iranian attack on American military base demonstrates Tehran's ability to hit U.S. forces despite defensive systems designed to prevent exactly these scenarios. UAE air defense forces intercepted 15 ballistic missiles and 119 Iranian drones today, according to official Emirati Defense Ministry statements. Those are staggering numbers, proving Iran is conducting massive sustained bombardment campaign, firing over 100 weapons, daily attempting to saturate Gulf defenses. Even with impressive interception rates where UAE destroys 90% or more of incoming threats, sheer volume of Iranian attacks means that 10% penetration still results in dozens of weapons hitting targets, causing damage and casualties. This mathematics of saturation warfare creates unsolvable defense problem. No air defense system, regardless of sophistication, can achieve 100% interception rate. There are always weapons that penetrate due to technical failures, operator errors, tactical deception, or simply overwhelming numbers exceeding engagement capacity. When Iran fires 100 weapons daily, even if UAE intercepts 95, 5 weapons still hit targets. Over a week-long campaign, those penetrations accumulate, causing substantial damage to infrastructure, killing civilians, and creating psychological terror where population knows next attack will definitely include some weapons that defenses cannot stop. UAE is now facing existential decision about whether continuing to host American military forces is worth becoming target for sustained Iranian attacks. Emirates joined American coalition against Iran, calculating that U.S. military protection would deter Iranian aggression, while American presence would strengthen UAE security. But Dubai airport attack demonstrates Iranian willingness to strike UAE civilian targets, regardless of American defensive umbrella, creating situation where hosting U.S. forces makes UAE more vulnerable, not less, because Iran views Emirates as American proxy legitimate for retaliation. If UAE decides that hosting American bases creates more risk than benefit and asks U.S. forces to leave, Washington loses critical Middle East staging ground, forcing reliance on more distant facilities that reduce operational effectiveness. This is exactly Iran's strategic objective: impose costs on Gulf states that support American operations until regional nations decide neutrality is preferable to being caught in crossfire between Washington and Tehran. Trump's response came swiftly through Truth Social post, stating that Iran will be hit very hard today. This represents presidential commitment to immediate massive retaliation within hours, not days, creating a situation where American military commanders are likely finalizing target packages and preparing strike forces for what could be largest single-day bombardment of Iranian territory since conflict began 8 days ago. The phrase "very hard" suggests qualitative, not just quantitative escalation, meaning Trump may authorize weapons or targets previously considered too escalatory. This could include strikes on Iranian population centers, targeting civilian infrastructure like power plants or water facilities, employing weapons of mass destruction like tactical nuclear weapons, or conducting decapitation strikes attempting to kill entire Iranian senior leadership simultaneously. Military analysts warning about the big one are speculating that Trump may authorize coordinated strikes across all these categories, creating a single day of maximum violence designed to break Iranian will to resist through shock and awe approach. But escalating to weapons of mass destruction or strikes on civilian population centers would trigger international condemnation and potentially direct intervention by Russia and China, who have vital interests in preventing American use of nuclear weapons in regional conflict. United Nations Security Council would convene emergency session where Russian and Chinese ambassadors would condemn American escalation and possibly propose resolutions demanding immediate ceasefire backed by threat of collective security action if Washington refuses to halt operations. Additionally, American use of tactical nuclear weapons would shatter 78-year nuclear taboo, where no nation has employed atomic weapons in combat since Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. This would fundamentally alter global nuclear politics, making future nuclear use more likely by creating precedent that nukes are acceptable military tools rather than weapons of last resort. North Korea, Pakistan, Russia would cite American-Iran precedent to justify their own potential nuclear use in regional conflicts, creating proliferation cascade that threatens entire non-proliferation regime. But Trump faces domestic political pressure to respond forcefully after Iranian attacks killed Americans and destroyed U.S. military facilities. Republican base expects strong retaliation. Congressional hawks are demanding massive strikes. Military commanders are presenting options for maximum damage. And Trump himself has staked political credibility on crushing Iranian resistance quickly before his 4-week victory deadline expires. We are now 8 days into that timeline, with 2 weeks remaining before Trump faces political crisis if victory isn't achieved. Iranian president's rebuff of unconditional surrender demand represents Tehran's calculation that sustained resistance is possible despite American military superiority. By rejecting Trump's terms and continuing military operations, Iranian leadership is betting that American public will lose patience before Iranian resistance collapses, that regional allies will abandon Washington before Tehran runs out of missiles, and that economic pressure from sustained war will force Trump to negotiate settlement rather than pursue indefinite conflict. This is classic asymmetric warfare strategy where weaker power doesn't need to win militarily, just needs to survive long enough to impose costs that stronger power considers unacceptable. North Vietnam employed this strategy successfully against United States in 1960s-70s. Taliban used similar approach in Afghanistan. Iran is attempting same playbook. Absorb American punishment while conducting enough retaliatory strikes to demonstrate continued resistance, drag out conflict until American political support collapses, force negotiated settlement that allows Iranian regime survival. But critical variable is whether American political support will collapse or whether sustained Iranian attacks on American forces and regional partners will harden American resolve, demanding total victory. Dubai airport attack could cut either way politically. Some Americans will view attack on civilian aviation hub as outrageous escalation requiring massive retaliation. Others will question why American military operations should continue if they're provoking Iranian attacks on global infrastructure affecting innocent civilians worldwide. What does America do next is question with profound implications, because response to Dubai attack sets precedent for entire conflict going forward. If Trump orders massive retaliation, potentially including weapons of mass destruction, war escalates to new level with unpredictable consequences, including possible Russian and Chinese intervention. If Trump restrains response-limiting strikes to military targets, Iran may interpret this as American weakness, encouraging additional attacks on civilian infrastructure throughout region. American military has several response options ranging from measured to catastrophic. Measured response would involve precision strikes on Iranian missile launchers and drone facilities attempting to degrade Tehran's capability to conduct future attacks on civilian targets. This continues current strategy of systematic degradation, hoping to eventually exhaust Iranian weapons stockpiles without dramatically escalating conflict. Moderate escalation would expand target set to include Iranian civilian infrastructure like power grids, telecommunications, transportation networks, creating economic pressure on Iranian government while avoiding direct attacks on population. This increases cost to Iran without crossing threshold into weapons of mass destruction, but risks international condemnation for targeting civilian facilities. Major escalation would involve strikes on Iranian population centers, including Tehran, using conventional weapons to create massive casualties and psychological shock, attempting to break Iranian will to resist. This represents war crime under international law because deliberately targeting civilians violates Geneva Conventions, but Trump administration might calculate that international legal constraints don't apply when protecting American interests. Maximum escalation would employ tactical nuclear weapons against buried Iranian facilities that conventional weapons cannot destroy, including underground enrichment facilities and leadership bunkers. This would guarantee destruction of targets, but would shatter nuclear taboo, creating global crisis, potentially leading to Russian and Chinese military intervention. Military commanders are almost certainly presenting all these options to Trump with recommendations about risks and benefits of each approach, but ultimate decision rests with President, who must weigh military effectiveness against political, legal, and strategic consequences of various escalation levels. Trump's personality and decision-making style suggest preference for dramatic gestures and maximum force applications, which favors more escalatory options despite potential blowback. Regional implications extend beyond immediate combat effects. Dubai airport attack demonstrates that no location in Gulf region is safe from Iranian retaliation, creating exodus of foreign workers, collapse of tourism sector, and massive capital flight as investors move money to safer jurisdictions. UAE economy could contract by 10 to 20% in single quarter if war continues disrupting aviation, tourism, real estate, and financial services that drive Emirati prosperity. Saudi Arabia watching UAE attacks closely and calculating whether continued support for American operations is worth becoming next target for Iranian strikes on civilian infrastructure. Saudis have even more vulnerable economy than UAE because oil production facilities are concentrated in eastern region within easy range of Iranian missiles. If Iran decided to target Saudi oil infrastructure like Abqaiq processing facility that handles 7 million barrels daily, single successful strike could remove 10% of global oil supply overnight, creating price spike to $200 per barrel or higher, triggering immediate global recession. Qatar hosts largest American base in Middle East at Al Udeid with over 10,000 U.S. personnel, but also maintains diplomatic relationships with Iran, creating balancing act where Doha tries to avoid becoming target while supporting American presence. Dubai attack may force Qatar to choose between maintaining American bases and protecting Qatari infrastructure from Iranian retaliation, creating scenario where Washington loses Al Udeid staging ground. Energy markets are experiencing renewed shock from Dubai attack, with oil prices jumping 8% overnight to $138 per barrel as traders price in risk of broader escalation affecting Gulf oil production and export. If Trump follows through on threat to hit Iran very hard today, using massive strikes that provoke Iranian retaliation against Saudi oil facilities, prices could spike to $160 to $180 within days, creating gasoline prices approaching $8 to $9 per gallon in United States. European economies already on brink of recession from sustained high energy prices would collapse into full economic contraction if oil spikes above $150 for extended period. Germany would face industrial shutdown. France would experience mass unemployment. Italy and Spain would default on sovereign debt. European Central Bank would be forced to choose between allowing recession or printing money to stimulate economy, creating inflation that makes energy costs even worse. China watching conflict closely because sustained high oil prices damage Chinese economy, which depends on imported energy for industrial production. But Chinese leadership also sees opportunity where American distraction in Middle East creates opening for Chinese moves in Taiwan, South China Sea, or other contested areas. If U.S. military is committed to Iran campaign, Washington has limited capacity to respond to Chinese actions in Western Pacific, creating window of vulnerability that Beijing might exploit. Russia similarly benefits from American entanglement in Middle East, plus benefits from high oil prices that boost Russian government revenues despite sanctions. Putin is almost certainly providing intelligence support to Iran, helping Tehran target American and allied forces while publicly calling for diplomatic solution. Russian intelligence sharing with Iran makes American operations more difficult and dangerous, creating additional drag on American military effectiveness. Subscribe right now, because next 24 hours will determine whether Trump escalates to weapons of mass destruction or maximum conventional strikes, potentially triggering Russian and Chinese intervention and global economic collapse, or whether Dubai attack creates enough international pressure to force negotiations despite Trump's unconditional surrender demand. When Trump announces retaliation for Dubai attack, when American strikes hit Iranian targets today, when Iran responds with additional attacks on regional infrastructure, when oil hits $150, when European recession begins. This channel explains implications as they develop. Before you go, answer critical question. Should Trump use tactical nuclear weapons to destroy Iranian underground facilities, forcing quick victory, or would nuclear escalation trigger global crisis worse than continued conventional war? Comment A, B, or C. A, use tactical nukes. Only way to destroy buried facilities and end war quickly. Acceptable risk. B, no nukes ever. Nuclear taboo must not be broken regardless of military benefits. Find alternative strategy. C, depends on Iranian response. If Iran escalates further, nukes become necessary. Drop your answer now. Day 8. Iran hit Dubai airport, flights grounded, thousands stranded, U.S. runway Kuwait destroyed. UAE intercepted 15 missiles, 119 drones. Trump promises Iran hit very hard today. World braces for the big one. Potential tactical nukes. Russian and Chinese intervention risks. Oil $138. European recession imminent. Regional allies questioning American protection. What does America do next? Decision made within hours. Subscribe now. I will see you in next update.